The afternoon sun poured through the glass walls of Elite Motors, making the polished cars gleam like treasures in a museum. 15-year-old Andre couldn't help but smile as he walked through the doors of the fanciest car dealership in the city. He had been waiting for this chance all week. His mom was busy with some big meeting downtown, something about investors and quarterly reports that made his eyes glaze over whenever she tried to explain. Just 2 hours, she had promised that morning, her fingers flying over her phone screen even as she spoke. Then we'll grab lunch at that burger place you like. Andre had nodded, already planning his solo adventure. Cars had been Andre's passion since he was little. Where other kids had posters of superheroes or musicians on their walls, Andre had carefully taped up pictures of rare sports cars and vintage classics. He could name every part of an engine by the time he was 12, thanks to hours spent watching restoration videos online and helping his uncle fix up an old Chevy in his garage on weekends. The showroom of Elite Motors was everything he had imagined it would be. The floor was so clean he could almost see his reflection in it. Soft music played in the background, and the air smelled faintly of leather and expensive cologne. About a dozen cars were displayed like art pieces, each one on a slightly raised platform with perfect lighting to highlight every curve and edge. Andre took a deep breath and tried to look casual, like someone who belonged there. He had put on his cleanest jeans and a plain blue hoodie. Nothing fancy, but neat enough that he hoped nobody would bother him. He just wanted to look at the cars up close, maybe snap a few pictures to show his friends at school. A midnight blue sports car caught his eye first, a limited edition model he had only ever seen in magazines. Its doors were slightly open, inviting visitors to peek inside. Andre approached it slowly, his heart beating faster as he got closer. The interior was even more impressive. Butter-soft leather seats, a dashboard that looked like something from a spaceship, and a steering wheel that probably cost more than most people's entire cars. Beautiful, isn't it? Andre jumped slightly, not having noticed the older man who had appeared beside him. The man wore a crisp suit with the dealership's logo on the breast pocket, and his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, it's amazing," Andre replied, enthusiasm making his voice crack slightly. "The V12 engine must give it incredible torque, and I read that it can go from 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. The man's eyebrows rose slightly, perhaps surprised by Andre's knowledge. "That's right. You know your cars." Andre nodded eagerly. "My uncle restores classics and I help him sometimes. This one's way different from what we work on, though." "I see." The man glanced around the showroom. "Are your parents with you today?" "My mom's in a meeting downtown. She'll be done in about an hour." Something changed in the man's expression and he straightened his back a little. "I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to come back when your mother can join you. We have a policy about unaccompanied minors in the showroom." Andre blinked in confusion. "Oh, I didn't know that. I just wanted to look around a bit." "I understand, but it's company policy. These vehicles are extremely valuable." Andre glanced around the showroom again and noticed something he hadn't before. About 20 feet away, 2 other teenagers, both with lighter skin than his, were examining a silver convertible. A salesman was chatting with them, smiling and gesturing enthusiastically. "What about them?" Andre asked, pointing toward the other teens. "They don't look much older than me." The man barely glanced in their direction. "Their father is a regular customer. He's in the financing office right now." His voice became firmer. "Now I'm going to have to ask you to leave and come back with a parent or guardian." Heat crept up Andre's neck, a mix of embarrassment and something else, something sharper and more painful that he was becoming too familiar with lately. He wanted to argue, to point out the unfairness, but the words stuck in his throat. "Fine," he managed to say, shoving his hands into his pockets. "I'll come back another time." The man escorted him to the exit, walking so close behind that Andre could feel his presence like a push. When they reached the glass doors, the man pressed a business card into Andre's hand. "Have your mother call to make an appointment if she's interested in any of our vehicles," he said, his tone making it clear he didn't think that was likely. Andre stepped outside, the afternoon suddenly feeling much hotter than before. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, the business card crumpled in his fist, watching through the glass as the man returned to the showroom. The man stopped to chat with the salesperson, showing the other teenagers around, both of them laughing at something one of the boys said. Andre turned away and started walking toward the bus stop. His mom wouldn't be done with her meeting for another hour, and he didn't want to text her about this. She had enough on her mind with her company stuff. As he waited for the bus, Andre tried to push down the feeling that had been growing inside him. It wasn't the first time something like this had happened. There was the time at the fancy electronics store when a security guard followed him around, but ignored his white friends, or when a teacher accused him of cheating on a math test because his score was unexpectedly high. Each time, he had swallowed his anger and hurt, not wanting to make a scene or be labeled as too sensitive. His phone buzzed with a text from his mom. Meeting ending early. "Where are you? Pick you up in 15. Andre texted back his location, grateful he wouldn't have to take the bus after all. As he waited, he tossed the crumpled business card into a trash can. When his mom's sensible black sedan pulled up to the curb, Andre plastered on a smile and climbed into the passenger seat. His mom looked tired but happy, her dark hair pulled back in its usual neat bun, her simple but elegant clothes a far cry from the flashy displays of wealth that some of the other parents at his school preferred. "How was your adventure?" she asked, pulling back into traffic. "Did you find anything interesting to do?" Andre shrugged, looking out the window. "Not really. Just walked around." His mom glanced at him, her eyes narrowing slightly. She had always been good at reading him. "Something happened?" "It's nothing," Andre said, then sighed. "I went to that car dealership on 5th Street. The fancy one. Elite Motors." His mom raised an eyebrow. "That place where all the bankers and celebrities buy their overpriced toys?" Despite himself, Andre smiled. His mom had strong opinions about people who spent millions on cars. "Yeah, that one. I just wanted to look at the cars, and," she prompted when he fell silent, "and they kicked me out." The words came out more bitterly than he'd intended, said I couldn't be there without a parent. His mom's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I see." Her voice was calm, but Andre knew that tone. It was the same one she used when dealing with people who underestimated her. "Was there anything else that might have made them think you shouldn't be there?" Andre hesitated. He didn't want to make this into a big deal, but he also didn't want to lie to his mom. There were other kids there without parents. The manager said their dad was a customer. He didn't have to spell out the rest. His mom nodded, her face giving away nothing as she navigated through traffic. "Thank you for telling me." They drove in silence for a few minutes. Then his mom spoke again, her voice gentler now. "You know, when I was about your age, I got kicked out of a department store. The security guard said I looked suspicious." Andre turned to look at her, surprised. His mom rarely talked about things like this. "What did you do?" he asked. A small, fierce smile crossed his mom's face. "At the time, nothing. I was too shocked and embarrassed. But later I promised myself that one day I'd walk into places like that, and nobody would dare tell me I didn't belong." They pulled into the parking lot of Andre's favorite burger place. Before getting out of the car, his mom reached over and squeezed his hand. "Some people will always try to make you feel small," she said. "The trick is to grow so big they can't ignore you anymore." Andre nodded, feeling something of his mom's strength flow into him. "Thanks, Mom. Don't mention it." She grabbed her purse. "Now let's get some food. I'm starving, and I have some calls to make later." As they walked into the restaurant, Andre had no idea that by this time tomorrow, everything would change. He couldn't know that his mom was already forming a plan, one that would turn his humiliation into something unexpected. All he knew was that right now, he was hungry and his mom was beside him, and somehow that made everything a little better. What the snooty sales staff at Elite Motors didn't know, what most people didn't know, was that Andre's mother, Vivian Taylor, was not just any businesswoman with a sensible sedan and practical suits. She was the founder and CEO of Taylor Innovations, a tech company that had recently been valued at just over $3 billion. Vivian had grown up with very little. Her father had worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, and her mother had sewn most of her clothes until she was in high school. Those early years had taught her the value of hard work, but also the sting of prejudice. She'd fought her way through college on scholarships, worked 80-hour weeks at her first tech job, and eventually risked everything to start her own company. Now, 10 years later, she was one of the wealthiest women in the country. But unlike many who reached her level of success, Vivian kept a deliberately low profile. She rarely gave interviews, avoided industry parties when possible, and had managed to keep her face out of most business magazines. Her focus had always been on her work and her son, not on becoming a public figure. Their house was large but not ostentatious. She drove nice cars but nothing flashy. And while she could have sent Andre to the most exclusive private school in the city, she had chosen a good public school where he wouldn't be surrounded only by children of privilege. Money changes how people see you, she had explained to Andre once. And sometimes it changes how you see yourself. I never want either of us to forget where we came from. That evening after their burger lunch, they sat at their kitchen island eating ice cream. Andre had mostly returned to his usual upbeat self, telling her about a science project he was working on with his best friend. But Vivian noticed how he skipped over any more details about what had happened at the dealership. So, she said when there was a lull in the conversation, about what happened today. Andre looked down at his ice cream bowl. It's not a big deal, Mom, honestly. It is a big deal, Vivian replied, keeping her voice gentle. And it's okay to admit that it hurt. Andre shrugged, poking at the melting ice cream with his spoon. I just feel stupid for even caring. It's not like I could afford any of those cars anyway. That's not the point, Vivian said. You had every right to be there looking at those cars. Just like anyone else, I know, Andre mumbled. But knowing doesn't make it feel any better. Vivian reached across the counter and covered his hand with hers. I'm sorry that happened to you, honey. And I'm sorry it won't be the last time something like this happens. Andre looked up at her, and Vivian saw in his eyes a mixture of anger and confusion that broke her heart. At 15, he was still trying to make sense of a world that sometimes seemed determined to make him feel unwelcome. It's just, he started, then paused, searching for words. They took one look at me and decided I didn't belong there, like I couldn't possibly be interested in nice cars for any good reason. I know, Vivian said, and that says everything about them and nothing about you. Andre nodded, but Vivian could tell he was still bothered. After a few moments of silence, he asked, What did you do? After that store kicked you out when you were my age? Vivian leaned back on her stool, remembering. Well, I cried once I got home. Then I got angry. Then I promised myself that someday I'd be successful enough to shop wherever I wanted, and no one would dare question my right to be there. And did that happen? Andre asked. A small smile played on Vivian's lips. Yes, but you know what I discovered once I got there? What? That changing their minds wasn't nearly as important as I thought it would be. What mattered was that I never let their limited thinking limit my dreams. She squeezed his hand, and I don't want you to let it limit yours either. After Andre went upstairs to finish his homework, Vivian sat at the kitchen counter, her mind working. She had always tried to shield Andre from certain harsh realities, while still preparing him for the world as it was. But incidents like today's showed her that no amount of preparation could fully protect him. She pulled out her phone and did a quick search for Elite Motors. Their website was sleek and professional, featuring all the luxury brands they carried and highlighting their exclusive clientele and personalized service. She scrolled to the About page and found a smiling photo of the owner, Richard Barnes, described as a second-generation luxury car dealer continuing his father's legacy of excellence. Vivian's finger hovered over her phone for a moment before she called her assistant. Hey, Diane, sorry to bother you on a Saturday, she said when her assistant answered. No problem at all, Diane replied. What do you need? 2 things. First, I need you to clear my morning schedule for Monday, all of it. The investors' call too, especially that. Reschedule it for later in the week. Done. And the second thing? Vivian took a deep breath. I need you to call our car service, the fancy one we use for visiting clients. I want the Rolls-Royce tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock sharp. And I'd like Trevor to drive it. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. Vivian almost never used the luxury car service, preferring to drive herself most places. Of course, Diane said finally. Anything else I should know? Yes, I'm also going to need 2 security SUVs and some members of our legal team to meet me at my house. Say around 8:30. And Diane, tell them to dress impressively. After ending the call, Vivian made another to her friend Rose, who headed the company's legal department. I need a favor, Vivian said after explaining what had happened to Andre. Say no more, Rose replied. I'll bring my scariest lawyers and my most intimidating briefcase. Vivian laughed for the first time since hearing about the incident. Thanks, I don't actually plan to sue them, but they don't need to know that right away. Understood. Scare tactics first, reasonable discussion later? Exactly. After hanging up, Vivian went to her home office and opened her laptop. She began researching Elite Motors more thoroughly, looking for any past complaints or issues. She found several negative reviews mentioning poor treatment of younger customers and people who didn't look like their typical clientele. Nothing actionable legally, but certainly a pattern. She also discovered that Richard Barnes, the owner, sat on several charity boards and had recently been quoted in a business magazine, talking about the importance of diversity in the luxury market. The hypocrisy made her jaw clench. As she worked, Vivian thought about what she wanted to accomplish tomorrow. This wasn't just about teaching some rude salespeople a lesson, though she couldn't deny she looked forward to seeing their faces. It was about something bigger, showing Andre that he could stand up for himself, that his dignity mattered, and that sometimes you had to make noise to be heard. Around midnight, she checked in on Andre. He was asleep, his history textbook still open beside him. Vivian gently removed the book and pulled his blanket up. Looking at his peaceful face, she felt the familiar fierce love that had driven every decision since he was born. "Sleep well, baby," she whispered. "Tomorrow's going to be interesting." Back in her room, Vivian opened her closet and pushed past her usual work attire of understated suits and dresses. At the far end hung the outfits she rarely wore, the ones for major investor meetings and the few industry events she couldn't avoid. She pulled out her most expensive suit, a perfectly tailored charcoal gray ensemble from a French designer, with subtle red stitching that caught the light when she moved. She laid it out for the morning, along with her grandmother's pearl earrings and a pair of red-bottomed heels that cost more than her first car. For once, Vivian wasn't going to downplay her success. Tomorrow she would remind the world and her son that she had earned her place anywhere she chose to go. Before going to bed, she sent one last text to Diane. "One more thing. Let's have the company jet ready tomorrow afternoon. I may want to take Andre to that car show in Milan next weekend. The one with the rare classics he's been talking about." Diane's reply came immediately. "Already on it." "And Vivian?" "Give 'em hell." Vivian smiled as she set her phone down. Tomorrow would be about more than making a point to some snobbish car dealers. It would be about showing Andre that while the world wasn't always fair, he had the power and the right to stand up for himself. And she would be right beside him when he did. Andre woke up to the smell of pancakes and the sound of his mom talking on the phone in the kitchen. This was unusual for a Sunday morning. Typically, his mom slept in until at least 9 on weekends, catching up on the rest she missed during her hectic work week. He shuffled downstairs in his pajamas, rubbing sleep from his eyes. The kitchen was full of activity. His mom stood by the stove in a silk bathrobe, flipping pancakes with one hand and holding her phone with the other. Their housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, was arranging fresh fruit on a platter, humming softly to herself. "Yes, that's right," his mom was saying into the phone. "We'll be there by 9:30. Make sure everyone understands the plan." She noticed Andre and smiled, covering the phone. "Morning, sleepyhead. Hungry?" Andre nodded, sliding onto a stool at the counter. "What's going on? Who are you talking to this early?" "Just some work stuff," she said vaguely. "Eat up. We're going out in about an hour." "On Sunday? Where?" His mom just smiled mysteriously. "It's a surprise. Wear something nice. That blue button-down I got you for your birthday would be perfect." Andre raised an eyebrow but knew better than to press when his mom had that particular look on her face. Instead, he dug into the stack of pancakes Mrs. Chen placed in front of him, drowning them in maple syrup. By 8:30, Andre was dressed and waiting in the living room, still completely in the dark about their plans. He heard cars pulling into their circular driveway and peeked out the window. His jaw dropped. A gleaming Rolls-Royce Phantom, midnight black with chrome accents that caught the morning sunlight, had stopped directly in front of their door. Behind it were 2 identical black SUVs with tinted windows. Men in suits were emerging from the vehicles, speaking into earpieces like Secret Service agents. "Mom?" Andre called out, not taking his eyes off the scene. "There's a Rolls-Royce outside, and I think we're being invaded." His mom appeared beside him, and Andre did a double take. Gone was her usual understated elegance. Today she looked like she had stepped off the cover of a fashion magazine. Her charcoal gray suit was perfectly tailored to her slender frame. Her hair was swept up in a sophisticated style he'd never seen before, and she wore makeup that accentuated her sharp cheekbones and determined eyes. Red-bottomed heels added several inches to her height, and around her neck hung a simple but obviously expensive diamond pendant. "What do you think?" she asked, twirling once. "Too much?" Andre blinked several times. Mom, what's going on? You look different. Good different or bad different? Good different. Like you're about to buy a small country or something. She laughed, the sound bright and confident. Not today, but we are going to pay a visit to Elite Motors. The pieces suddenly clicked together in Andre's mind. Wait, is this about yesterday? Mom, you don't have to. I know I don't have to, she interrupted gently. I want to. Now grab your jacket. Our chariot awaits. Outside, a tall man in a chauffeur's uniform opened the Rolls-Royce's rear door with a flourish. Good morning, Ms. Taylor, young sir. Beautiful day for a drive, isn't it? It certainly is, Trevor, his mom replied, sliding into the back seat as if she rode in Rolls-Royces every day. Andre followed, trying to play it cool despite his amazement at the car's interior. Buttersoft leather seats, real wood paneling, and more electronic gadgets than he could count greeted him. The car even smelled expensive, like leather and some subtle cologne he couldn't name. As they pulled away from the house, the two SUVs fell into formation behind them. Andre turned to his mom, who was checking something on her phone. Seriously, Mom, what are we doing? She put her phone away and looked at him, her expression softening. We're going to teach some people a lesson about making assumptions. And maybe learn one ourselves. What does that mean? It means, she said, taking his hand, that I want you to watch what happens today. I want you to remember that you never have to accept being treated as less than you are. But I also want you to see that true power isn't about showing off or putting others down. It's about standing firm in your own worth. Andre nodded slowly, still not entirely sure what was about to happen, but feeling a flutter of excitement in his stomach. Whatever his mom had planned, it was going to be memorable. The drive to Elite Motors took about 20 minutes. As they approached, Andre felt a knot form in his stomach. Yesterday's humiliation was still fresh, and part of him wanted to sink into the Rolls-Royce's plush seats and disappear. His mom must have sensed his anxiety because she squeezed his hand. You have nothing to be ashamed of, she said firmly. Hold your head high. You belong anywhere you choose to be just as much as anyone else. The Rolls-Royce pulled up directly in front of the dealership's main entrance, followed by the two SUVs. Through the tinted windows, Andre could see people inside the showroom turning to look. A valet rushed forward, then hesitated, clearly unsure how to handle such an impressive motorcade. Trevor came around and opened their door with practiced elegance. Andre's mom stepped out first, sunglasses now perched on her nose, looking every inch the powerful executive she was. Andre followed, straightening his shoulders and lifting his chin just like she'd told him to. From the SUVs emerged 4 people, 3 women and 1 man, all in sharp suits and carrying leather portfolios. They formed a loose semicircle behind Andre and his mom, creating an unmistakable impression of importance and authority. Ready? His mom asked quietly. Andre took a deep breath and nodded. Ready. They walked through the glass doors and into the showroom. The reaction was immediate and almost comical. Salespeople who had been chatting or scrolling on their phones suddenly stood at attention. A young woman who had been arranging brochures dropped several on the floor. And there, near the same midnight blue sports car that had caught Andre's eye yesterday, stood the floor manager who had kicked him out. The man's expression went from practiced welcome to confusion to recognition in the span of a few seconds. His eyes darted from Andre to the impressive group behind him, clearly trying to make sense of the situation. Andre's mom walked directly toward him, her heels clicking authoritatively on the polished floor. The sound seemed to echo in the suddenly quiet showroom. Good morning, she said pleasantly, extending her hand. I'm Vivian Taylor, CEO of Taylor Innovations, and this is my son, Andre. I believe you two met yesterday. The floor manager's face drained of color. Ms. Taylor, he stammered, shaking her hand weakly. Yes, that is, he cleared his throat. How can we assist you today? Well, Vivian said, her voice carrying easily through the silent showroom. Andre was telling me about your impressive collection, and I thought I should see it for myself. My company is looking to purchase a fleet of executive vehicles, around 20 to start. The manager's eyes widened. A fleet sale of that size would be massive, possibly the biggest deal the dealership had ever made. Of course, he said, finding his professional demeanor again. We would be honored to help you with that. Let me just get our director of corporate sales. Actually, Vivian interrupted smoothly. Before we discuss business, there's something I'd like to address. She turned slightly, including the other salespeople in her gaze. My son visited your showroom yesterday. He was asked to leave because he was unaccompanied. However, he noticed other young people were allowed to stay. The only difference he could see was the color of his skin. The silence in the room became even more profound. The floor manager's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. I'm not here to cause a scene, Vivian continued. I'm here because I believe in teaching moments. My son needs to see that he should never accept discrimination, and perhaps your staff needs to see that assumptions about who belongs where can be very costly mistakes. A new voice entered the conversation. Ms. Taylor, I'm Richard Barnes, the owner of Elite Motors. A man in his 50s approached from the back of the showroom, his hand extended. I wonder if we might continue this conversation in my office. Vivian considered for a moment, then nodded. Of course. Andre will come with us. As they followed Barnes to his office, Andre caught snippets of whispered conversations among the staff. One woman was frantically Googling his mom on her phone, her eyes growing wider as she scrolled. The owner's office was as luxurious as the rest of the dealership, with large windows overlooking the car lot and walls decorated with photos of Barnes with celebrities and automotive executives. He gestured for them to sit in leather chairs across from his desk. Ms. Taylor, let me first say that I'm deeply disturbed by what you've described. Barnes began, his tone carefully measured. Elite Motors prides itself on providing exceptional service to all our guests regardless of age, race, or any other factor. I appreciate that sentiment, Vivian replied. But policies only matter when they're actually followed. Andre watched the exchange with a mixture of pride and amazement. His mom, always confident, seemed to have transformed into someone even more powerful today. Someone who commanded respect just by entering a room. Richard Barnes leaned forward in his leather chair, hands clasped on his polished desk. Ms. Taylor, I want to personally apologize to your son for any discomfort he experienced yesterday. If one of my staff made him feel unwelcome based on anything other than our standard policies, that's completely unacceptable. Vivian nodded but didn't immediately respond. Instead, she turned to Andre. Would you like to tell Mr. Barnes exactly what happened yesterday? Andre felt his heart beat faster as both adults looked at him. Yesterday, he'd felt small and powerless. Today, sitting in this plush office with his mom beside him, he felt different, like his words actually mattered. I came in to look at the cars, Andre began, his voice steadier than he expected. I wasn't touching anything or causing problems. The floor manager came over and asked if my parents were with me. When I said no, he told me I had to leave because of some policy about unaccompanied minors. Andre paused, meeting Barnes's eyes directly, but there were other teenagers here without parents. The manager said they could stay because their dad was a customer. The thing is, they didn't look like me. Barnes frowned, glancing at the floor manager who stood uncomfortably by the door. Is this accurate, Paul? The manager shifted his weight. Sir, it's store policy that unaccompanied minors. That wasn't my question, Barnes interrupted sharply. Were there other young people in the showroom who were allowed to stay? Paul hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Yes, the Henderson boys. But their father spends over $500,000 with us annually. He was in financing discussing his new purchase. I see, Barnes said, his expression hardening. And did you know for certain that Ms. Taylor wasn't a potential customer? The manager looked down. No, sir. Barnes turned back to Vivian. Ms. Taylor, I'm genuinely embarrassed by this situation. We clearly have issues that need addressing. I hope you'll accept my personal apology to both you and Andre. One of the lawyers who had accompanied them, a tall woman with close-cropped hair, stepped forward, handing Vivian a slim folder. Vivian opened it, skimmed its contents, then passed it to Barnes. This is interesting reading, Mr. Barnes, she said calmly. My team compiled customer reviews of Elite Motors from the past 2 years. There's a pattern of similar experiences, particularly among younger visitors and people of color. Barnes took the folder with a slight grimace. As he flipped through the pages, his face grew increasingly troubled. I had no idea, he said finally, closing the folder. This is concerning. It should be, Vivian replied. I'm not here to threaten legal action, though I certainly could. I'm here because I want something constructive to come from this. Barnes nodded, looking relieved. I'm open to suggestions. First, Vivian said, I'd like you to implement proper training for your staff. Not just a one-time sensitivity seminar, but ongoing education about implicit bias and customer service. Absolutely, Barnes agreed quickly. I'll make arrangements this week. Second, she continued, I'd like to see Elite Motors establish an internship program for high school students interested in the automotive industry, with special outreach to underrepresented communities. Barnes looked thoughtful. That's actually an excellent idea. We've been discussing ways to connect with younger car enthusiasts. And finally, Vivian said, her voice softening slightly, I'd like your dealership to sponsor the upcoming classic car restoration competition at Andre's school. Many of the students there have talent and passion for cars but limited resources for their projects. At this, Andre looked at his mom in surprise. He hadn't even told her about the competition yet. He'd only seen the flyer at school on Friday. Barnes smiled for the first time since they'd entered his office. I'd be happy to do that. In fact, I'd like to judge the competition myself if they'll have me. Before I took over the dealership from my father, I restored classics as a hobby. Excellent, Vivian said with a nod. She turned to Andre. Is there anything you'd like to add? Andre thought for a moment. Just one thing, he said, looking at the floor manager who still stood uncomfortably by the door. I don't want anyone to lose their job because of what happened to me. But maybe next time, give people a chance before deciding they don't belong somewhere. The manager looked up, clearly surprised by Andre's words. Thank you, he said quietly, and I truly am sorry. As they wrapped up the meeting, Barnes mentioned something that caught Vivian's attention. You mentioned your company is looking for a fleet of executive vehicles? Yes, Vivian replied. We're expanding our operations and I believe in providing our top performers with appropriate incentives. Barnes nodded enthusiastically. We'd be honored to work with Taylor Innovations. In fact, I'd like to offer you special terms as a gesture of goodwill. Vivian smiled slightly. That's generous, Mr. Barnes. I'll have my procurement team contact you this week to discuss details. As they stood to leave, Barnes asked, May I show you some of our premium models while you're here? No pressure, of course, just thought Andre might enjoy seeing them up close. Andre couldn't help but smile at the irony. 24 hours ago, he'd been forced to leave this same showroom. Now the owner himself wanted to give him a private tour. They spent the next hour exploring the most exclusive vehicles in the collection. Barnes was surprisingly knowledgeable and seemed genuinely excited to share details about engine specifications and limited edition features with Andre. For his part, Andre impressed both adults with his own automotive knowledge, asking questions that showed his genuine passion for cars. You know, Barnes said at one point, we host a monthly cars and coffee event for enthusiasts. It's usually just adults, but we could make an exception for someone with your level of knowledge. Bring your friends if you'd like. By the time they prepared to leave, the atmosphere had completely transformed. The staff who had earlier been whispering and staring now smiled respectfully. The floor manager who had kicked Andre out yesterday personally opened doors for them, and Richard Barnes handed Andre his business card, encouraging him to call directly if he ever had questions about cars or wanted to see new arrivals. Outside, as they waited for Trevor to bring the Rolls-Royce around, Andre turned to his mom. That was not what I expected. What did you expect? Vivian asked with a small smile. I don't know. More yelling? Lawyers throwing papers around? Dramatic exits? He shrugged. Not. Whatever this was, Vivian laughed. Sometimes the most powerful moves aren't the loud ones. We could have made a scene, threatened lawsuits, demanded people be fired, and yes, that might have felt satisfying in the moment. She put her arm around his shoulders. But what did we accomplish instead? Andre thought about it. The dealership is going to get better training. They're starting an internship program. They're sponsoring our school competition. He looked up at his mom with newfound admiration. And they're buying a fleet of cars from your company. Exactly, Vivian said with a wink. Always leave people away to save face while doing the right thing. It's not about crushing opponents, it's about creating allies. As they slid into the Rolls-Royce, Andre noticed several people on the sidewalk taking photos of the impressive vehicle. Among them were two teenage boys about his age, nudging each other and pointing at the car with obvious envy. Those are the Henderson boys, Andre said quietly, the ones who were allowed to stay yesterday. Vivian followed his gaze. What do you want to do? Andre thought for a moment, then lowered his window. Hey, he called to the boys who looked startled to be addressed. There's a cars and coffee event here next month. Mr. Barnes said I could bring friends. You guys should come. The boys exchanged surprised glances before the taller one replied, For real? That would be awesome, Andre nodded. I'll get your details from Barnes. It'll be cool to talk with other people who know about cars. As they drove away, Vivian gave her son a curious look. That was unexpected, Andre shrugged. Like you said, it's not about crushing opponents. It's about creating allies. Vivian smiled proudly. When did you get so wise? I have a pretty good teacher, he replied, grinning back at her. As they headed home, Andre's phone buzzed with notifications. News was spreading fast. Somehow, word had gotten out about the billionaire CEO who had shown up in a Rolls-Royce after her son was discriminated against at Elite Motors. His best friend had already texted, Dude, is that your mom all over social media? Andre showed the message to his mom, who groaned. So much for my low profile. Is that bad? Andre asked. Vivian considered for a moment. No, she said finally. Maybe it's time I stepped more into the spotlight. Especially if it helps other people see what's possible. By the time they arrived home, 3 news outlets had requested interviews. Richard Barnes had issued a public statement about Elite Motors' new diversity initiatives. And Andre had received invitations to join 2 different school car clubs he hadn't even known existed. So, Vivian said as they walked into the house, kicking off her high heels with obvious relief. Did you learn anything today? Andre nodded slowly. Yeah, I learned that standing up for yourself doesn't always look like you expect to. And sometimes being powerful means being smart about how you use that power. Vivian smiled. Good lessons. Anything else? Andre grinned. Also, my mom is kind of a badass. Vivian laughed and pulled him into a hug. Don't forget it. 3 weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. The story of what happened at Elite Motors had spread far beyond what either Andre or his mom had expected. Someone in the dealership had posted about the incident on social media, and within days it had gone viral. Local news picked it up first, then national outlets. Suddenly people were talking about the Rolls-Royce response as a masterclass in handling discrimination with dignity. For Vivian, this unexpected spotlight came with mixed feelings. She had always valued her privacy, preferring to let her company's innovations speak for themselves rather than becoming the face of the brand. But seeing how the story resonated with so many people, especially parents of color who had faced similar situations with their children, she began to reconsider her approach. Maybe being visible matters more than I thought, she told Andre one evening. As they scrolled through hundreds of supportive comments online, for Andre, the attention was equally bewildering. At school, he'd gone from being relatively unknown outside his circle of friends to something of a minor celebrity. Some of this attention was welcome, like when the captain of the school's engineering team invited him to join their upcoming robotics competition. Some was awkward, like the girls who suddenly wanted to sit with him at lunch, and some was downright uncomfortable, like the few students who accused him of making everything about race or causing trouble for attention. Just remember who you are, his mom advised when he mentioned the negative comments. People who don't know you will always have opinions about you. The trick is knowing which ones matter. Today marked the culmination of everything that had happened since that Sunday morning at Elite Motors. The dealership was hosting its first ever Young Automotive Enthusiasts workshop, the direct result of the agreement Vivian had reached with Richard Barnes. And Andre, somewhat to his surprise, had been asked to give the opening remarks. I still don't get why they want me to speak, Andre said as he adjusted his tie in the hallway mirror. I'm not good at public speaking. Because you're the reason this program exists, his mom replied, straightening his collar. And because your story might help other kids feel like they belong in spaces where people try to tell them they don't. Andre nodded, still nervous but understanding the importance. Do I look okay? Vivian stepped back to inspect him. He wore dark jeans, a light blue button-down shirt, and a navy blazer, put together but not overly formal. You look perfect, she assured him. The drive to Elite Motors felt different this time. No Rolls-Royce, no intimidating entourage, just Vivian and Andre in her everyday sedan. But as they pulled into the parking lot, Andre noticed the change immediately. Temporary signs directed visitors to Young Automotive Enthusiasts workshop parking, and a banner hung across the main entrance. Driving the future, where all young talent belongs. Inside, the showroom had been transformed. The luxury cars remained on display, but between them were stations set up with various automotive components, engines, transmissions, design software on large monitors, even a virtual reality setup that allowed users to experience a test drive. About 50 teenagers from various schools around the city milled about, some already engrossed in the hands-on exhibits, others looking around with the same wide-eyed wonder Andre had felt on his first visit. Richard Barnes spotted them immediately and hurried over, hand extended. "Miss Taylor, Andre? So glad you could make it." He looked genuinely pleased to see them. "Everything's ready for your speech, Andre. We'll begin in about 15 minutes. As Barnes led them through the showroom, pointing out the different activities, Andre recognized several familiar faces. The Henderson boys gave him a nod of recognition. His science teacher was deep in conversation with an automotive engineer by a cutaway engine display. Even the floor manager, Paul, was there, carefully explaining the intricacies of automotive design software to a group of interested students. "Paul's been surprisingly enthusiastic about the program," Barnes commented, following Andre's gaze. "After our conversation that day, he asked to be part of the planning committee. I think the whole experience was eye-opening for him." Before Andre could respond, he felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find a younger boy, maybe 12 or 13, looking up at him with undisguised admiration. "Are you Andre? The one from the story?" the boy asked. Andre nodded, a bit embarrassed. "Yeah, that's me. I saw the video your mom posted about standing up for yourself. My dad showed it to me after some kids at school said I couldn't join the coding club because—" The boy hesitated, then straightened his shoulders. "Well, because I don't look like what they think a coder should look like. Did you join anyway?" Andre asked. The boy grinned. "Yeah, and I'm really good at it too. Better than most of them." Andre felt something warm bloom in his chest. "That's awesome, man. What's your name?" "Luis," the boy replied. "I want to design car software someday. That's why I'm here." "Well, stick around after my speech," Andre told him. "I'll introduce you to some people who can tell you more about that." As Luis hurried back to his father, Vivian squeezed Andre's shoulder. "See? That's why your voice matters." At precisely 10 o'clock, Barnes called for everyone's attention. The crowd gathered around a small stage that had been set up at one end of the showroom. Barnes welcomed everyone, spoke briefly about Elite Motors' new commitment to community outreach and education, then introduced Andre as the young man whose passion for cars helped us see that we needed to do better. As Andre took his place at the podium, his heart hammered in his chest. The faces before him, curious, expectant, supportive, blurred slightly. He took a deep breath, found his mom in the crowd, and began. "3 weeks ago, I walked into this dealership just wanting to look at some amazing cars," he started, his voice steadier than he expected. "I didn't know if I'd ever be able to afford one, but I loved them anyway. I knew every spec, every feature, every design element, but none of that mattered, because someone took one look at me and decided I didn't belong here." He paused, looking around the room. That could have been the end of the story. I could have just accepted it. Could have told myself that some doors aren't meant for people who look like me to walk through, but my mom taught me something important that day. She taught me that when someone tries to make you feel small, sometimes the most powerful response isn't to get angry or give up. It's to show them exactly who you are. The room was completely silent now. Everyone focused on his words. "I'm standing here today because one bad experience turned into something good, but I'm also thinking about all the kids who face moments like that and don't have someone to help them push back, who start believing the limitations others put on them. This program isn't just about cars. It's about making sure everyone knows they have a right to pursue their passions, no matter who they are or what they look like." Andre went on to thank Barnes for his willingness to learn and change, to thank the volunteers who had made the workshop possible, and to encourage everyone to take full advantage of the day's activities. By the time he finished, his nervousness had disappeared entirely. The applause was genuine and enthusiastic. As Andre stepped down from the podium, several people came forward to congratulate him. His mom watched from a distance, giving him his moment, her eyes bright with pride. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activities. Andre found himself moving between groups, helping where he could, connecting people with similar interests and occasionally catching his mom's eye across the room. She spent much of her time speaking with parents and educators, discussing ways to expand the program and possibly bring similar initiatives to other industries. Near the end of the event, Barnes gathered everyone again for a final announcement. I'm pleased to share that Elite Motors is establishing an annual scholarship for 2 students interested in pursuing automotive careers, he said. The scholarship will cover vocational training or college education, depending on the recipient's goals. And we've decided to name it after the young man who inspired us to create this program in the first place, the Andre Taylor Automotive Excellence Scholarship. The surprise on Andre's face made everyone laugh. His mom looked equally shocked. Clearly, this hadn't been part of their original agreement. As the crowd began to disperse, Andre found himself standing next to Paul, the floor manager who had kicked him out that first day. That was quite a speech, Paul said somewhat awkwardly. You have a gift for it. Thanks, Andre replied. I was nervous. Couldn't tell. Paul hesitated, then added, I want you to know I've been doing a lot of thinking since what happened. I had some blind spots I didn't even realize were there. Andre nodded, unsure what to say. Anyway, Paul continued, if you're ever interested in learning more about the business side of things, not just the cars themselves, I'd be happy to show you around properly. Maybe you could shadow me for a day during summer break. I'd like that, Andre said, surprised to find he genuinely meant it. As they drove home that evening, both Andre and his mom were quiet, processing the day's events. So, Vivian finally said, how does it feel to have a scholarship named after you before you've even finished high school? Andre laughed. Weird. Good weird, though. He looked out the window for a moment, then added, I keep thinking about Luis, that younger kid I met, and all the others who came today. This whole thing started because someone made me feel like I didn't belong somewhere, but it ended with making sure a bunch of other kids will never have to feel that way. That's pretty cool. Vivian reached over and squeezed his hand. That's how change happens. Not all at once, but person by person, moment by moment. And it often starts with someone brave enough to say, this isn't right. I wasn't brave, Andre protested. I didn't even do anything that day. I just left when they told me to. But you told me about it, his mom pointed out. You didn't hide it or pretend it didn't hurt. That was the brave part. She smiled at him. I'm so proud of the person you're becoming. As they pulled into their driveway, Andre's phone buzzed with a notification. Luis had found him on social media and sent a message. Thanks for today. My dad says maybe I can apply for that scholarship when I'm older. See you at the next workshop. Andre smiled, typing back a quick reply. The car dealership incident had started with exclusion, but it had ended with something much more powerful. Connection. And that, he realized, was the best response of all.